I'm going to dive straight into it. What do we want to? You've heard sort of my introduction. What do we want to see today? What are we hoping to get out of today?
I think it was covered off in Rick's earlier thing about revolution, evolution. I think there's, I've worked in loyalty 28 years, but the last 5 years has been crazy, and it's getting faster. The speed of change in every aspect that we do, we're seeing loyalty reinvented. I don't think it's more evolution than revolution. I think there'll be people long dead before frequent flyer programs are still going to be around. So I think our future's clear, but also, it's changing rapidly. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think what's also interesting, what also is becoming more prevalent is actually shareholders are expecting developed loyalty strategies. So investors in big companies, investors in medium-sized companies are asking questions about loyalty. And, in the end, it's the customer that generates all the revenue. So what are our customer strategies? And I think even if you disregard loyalty, if you're a big company and you decide it's not for you, you have to have a good strategic reason why you've done that. So almost there's going to be some, we're consultants. I'm sure there's going to be some consulting projects coming along soon that says, tell me why I don't want loyalty because my shareholders are driving me mad. But that's the way it's going.
So that's a good point, Alan. So let me reframe the question to not so much about what we want to hear today, but let me tie into that in what trends have we been seeing recently? And I think what you just said before, the awareness of the financial contribution that programs make is suddenly very, very mainstream. I mean, this was inside baseball a few years ago. And, yes, the pandemic has helped with that, but even besides the pandemic and the securitization of programs, but it is a mainstream commercial conversation in brands now, isn't it?
Acquiring customers is sexy. If you are, especially if you're a relatively new business, you're a startup, you're going to be looked at how many customers, what's the CPA? That's what you're going to look at. And then suddenly somebody will go, hold on a minute, we've got all these customers. What are we doing about the retention? Now, retention is not something that gets built in my experience, in those initial business cases. But whether it's a new business or an existing business, because an existing established business has to keep reinventing itself. It's a golden age for loyalty because ultimately, as I've said, customers are our revenue generators.
In one of the sessions we have today is on sustainability, reimagining sustainability. There's a lot of talk about, a lot of buzzwords, but in practical senses, what have you seen in recent times that you think is worth calling out at this point?
I mean, there's two things I'd say. The first is that more and more programs are having a sustainable element, and you see it in all walks of life, not just in travel loyalty programs. But as Charlie will say in some research she did, that although more programs are launching green elements, its customers don't care about those green elements as much as they care about rewards, right? And they're more about the brand than they are about what the customer wants. I think as the pips start to squeak and as we get closer to 2050 and the green agenda is going to be higher and higher and people are going to feel more pain, I think the airlines are going to have to start to become more conscious of the fact that they're going to be accused of greenwashing if they're not careful. Okay, so things like status runs, we all know work. I think that's a canary in the mine where people are going to start calling us out if we're not being true to that thing. So I think that there's going to be a revolution in sustainability in airlines. I think frequent flyer programs will still exist, but they're going to have to change because people aren't going to put up with it. They're just not. The politicians aren't going to put up with it. Now, the politicians invented loyalty programs, the rules to loyalty programs in the first place, because they wanted to fly around and be rewarded for it, which is why we don't get taxed on frequent flyer programs, right? So they have a vested interest, but at the same way, we're going to have to start changing our attitude because, that canary's in the mine and it's not looking healthy.
We've got more time in the UK following Rishi Sunak's announcement yesterday of green doesn't go.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if you give people the option to add £7, £8, £10, whatever the amount is to offset your flight, we all know the take-up rates are tiny. And maybe we should maybe the industry should lobby for a change in permission rules. So as we know, everybody's got to opt in unless it's green, and then you've got to opt out. That would be my initiative to try and help that sake. Because you're right, airlines...
We have to do something.
Airlines generate 2.7% of global carbon, but it's one of those things, a bit like automotive, it's one of those things that people hold dear to themselves. And yes, I'm an environmentalist. I believe in green issues, but I'm going to still take my holidays. And what you see in terms of changes of behaviour, certainly coming out of the pandemic, people are investing more in premium cabins. So I'm going to have less holidays, but I'm going to spend more money. Now, you can see that in the loads. And any airline that doesn't have premium economy, you need to get one, because that's where the money is at the moment. Business is still too expensive, but people want a better experience. Although clever customers figure out you're going to get a whole row in the back for yourself because everybody's in premium. But the premium itself is a treat, but it's obviously carries more carbon with it because it's a bigger space. The seat is a little bit heavier. So to Iain's point, I don't know what the answer is because it's a bit like what Rishi Sunak has just done. It's a brave, in this case, government or a brave organisation that really pushes that to the point where it affects the customer value proposition.
And I think if we go on to what we want to hear from today, I really want to hear, particularly from that session later with Harold, is about some honesty in the room about that, some honesty. And because I think, we have a reputation as a business to make sure that we are honest to ourselves about these things.
I mean, the only things that airlines do well at the moment when it comes to sustainability is you can't inherit your frequent flyer balance. Once you die, it's dead. So that's about the only thing you can do. We can point out that actually is quite meaningful in terms of helping the environment.
Well, any way that we can reframe an unfriendly customer initiative as being friendly for the environment gets us off the hook, right? Let's explore that more in the sustainability
the bad news is we generate a lot of carbon. The good news is our customers will die. There's the marketing.
We used to call it utility terminal churn. You can't win those customers back.
The sad thing is, of course, as we all know, everyone who works in programs, that in your database, the filtering out those that have moved on permanently is a challenge sometimes in terms of how you identify them. You don't want to prematurely assume that they're not flying with you anymore because they've permanently moved on, or whether they just don't like you anymore and they've moved on to your competitor. Sometimes the data looks the same, doesn't it? We've got 2 more minutes left, but before we do, we also want to talk about partnerships today. And I wanted to pick your brains in terms of how you feel partnerships are looking different today than how they have previously, and sort of maybe a couple of issues there that might be worth exploring later on when we talk about reimagining loyalty partnerships.
I mean, it's interesting, and again, Charlie did some research recently where customers really want partnerships. There's still no reason why coalition programs shouldn't work fundamentally, and they want partnerships in almost every category. They want to collect at partner brands as much as, or if not more than the lead brand. And partnerships have become easier to do, but the coalition model is in decline. And so what I'm really keen to hear about this afternoon is what are the new innovations, what are the new ways in which partners can partner with other like-minded organizations, because customers do want partnerships to work. Mm-hmm. And but brands don't play nicely with each other, right? That's the truth of it. If we don't get our life in order, then the over-the-top providers like Facebook, Google will do it. They'll do it for us. So, I think that's going to be a really interesting future. I'm really interested on that particular group this afternoon about how that's going.
All right. Well, let's get right into it. Please.
Can I say one more? One thing I'd really like to see from this session today is a bit of honesty about. In Scotland, we toast absent friends, and so can I just have a show of hands here? How many people here are involved in either running a loyalty program or a travel loyalty program or working for a travel loyalty program? Perfect. And in loyalty, and how many here are from revenue management? And how many here are from finance? Or one, Stuart, but you used to work for the loyalty company, so that doesn't count.
I think you're in the wrong meeting.
So one thing I really want to come out of today is that we're all in this room. We're all praying to the same God, right? But we're for loyalty to work in an organisation, particularly a travel organisation. It's a marriage between the loyalty people and the airline, and it's often a dysfunctional marriage. And I'm not saying my marriage is dysfunctional. Go on, Nicola.
It's okay. Revenue management is over at the Premier Inn. Sorry.
Did we invite the revenue management people?
Who?
Did we invite the revenue management people?
Who?
Yeah, we don't talk about we. But what?
So I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
At one point, we also be more open to invite those people.
You know, no, I think it's a good, and I think we should definitely explore it later. All jokes aside,
Yeah.
I mean, the truth of the matter is that revenue management traditionally has always looked down on loyalty. You know, they've seen loyalty as part of marketing. Marketing is the coloring in department, you know, whereas revenue management is responsible for delivering commercial results. Now, I think the paradigm now has shifted in that loyalty is seen as a revenue driver now. Yes, too many times it's still in the marketing department in terms of internal structures. I do believe that's problematic. But certainly I can tell you with the airlines that I work with, I can certainly say that I've seen a shift in terms of, you know, revenue management and loyalty working much more closely together than they have at any time in the past.
Yes.
Now, it's not true in every airline or in every hotel. I mean, some have a longer way to go than others, but I do think we've seen a shift. But we should explore that more later on throughout the day, because I think that whether it's revenue management, whether it's finance, or whether it's operations, I think that loyalty can only be successful when working with the wider and having buy-in from the wider organization. And the only way you're going to get that is ultimately by having C-level sponsorship of the loyalty strategies, which is easier said than done.
And I guess that's where I'm coming from, because, you know, I'm not saying my marriage is dysfunctional by any means, but, you know, I'd love to go on holiday at the Faroe Islands. That's never going to happen. I'd like to play bagpipes on a Sunday morning. That's never going to happen. You know, I like to go to the shops with my slippers. I got caught doing that once, and that didn't end well. And I think what I'm saying is that we've got to remember in this room that we're all praying to the same God, but there's other people outside this room. Can I have another show of hands? How many people think it's a great idea to offer lounge access to people who have a very high value with partners, not with the airline? Great. Well, you have revenue management or finance in here, or airline people in here.
The point is that we have not invited them.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's.
No, I agree. But I guess what I'm saying is, what I'd like to see from this, what I'd like to see from the debate today and the things we cover off, is that we need to consider that there's not just the people in this room, there's others we need to consider when we think about our strategies, because there's an alternative view that might not be represented here that we have to take account of. Is that fair, Nicola?
Can I just add to that, Iain?
Yeah.
So on the revenue management front, revenue management, this is very airline-centric, but it also applies to hotels. Revenue management need to be your best friends, and if you don't understand how revenue management works, then you don't understand how the business works, and therefore you're not a credible loyalty professional. And so using RM concepts actually is the key to driving successful loyalty outcomes. I think on your wife, no, it's another story. Lastly, on partners, one point I wanted to make on partners is maybe we can challenge ourselves. You know, I've worked with airline loyalty programs for 20 years, and the general consensus is we want to keep the money in the system. So when it comes to redemption outside our core system, we don't like it. And so therefore we value it low, and it becomes a poor value proposition to the customer, but actually good for the cash flow. Then I think about Tesco. Tesco is the most successful retailer, I think, in Europe. It's the most profitable retailer in Europe, grocer, sorry. Why do they offer twice the value to their members when they redeem outside the system than inside the system? And that's even after the discount they get from the pumps. Why do they do that? So if we can explore that today, that might challenge some of our preconceptions around where does the money go in terms of the loyalty revenues that are generated.
Well, it's a good segue there talking about other sectors, because that's our first session of the day. And if I could get if I get Charlie's panel, if you guys want to go to the back of the room, we'll do a quick mic swap out, and I'll get Rick to come out to just perhaps talk about the topic for the next session. As we do that, and we'll get right into it. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Iain.